Hi, this story is about furious anger and a famous pirate woman, Jeanne de Clisson. If you want to know how far the woman can get in her revenge, this story is just for you. Stay tuned. Jeanne de Clisson, also known as Jeanne de Belleville and Lioness of Brittany, was a Breton former noblewoman who became a privateer to avenge her husband after he was executed for treason by the French king. She plied the English Channel and targeted French ships, often slaughtering the crew. It was her practice to leave at least one sailor alive to carry her message to the French king. Jean-Louise de Belleville de Clisson Madame de Montagu was born in 1300 in Belleville-sur-Vienne, in Vendée, a daughter of nobleman Maurice IV Montagu of Belleville and Poulou and Letouce de Pantenay in the Gatienne-Vendée. In 1312, when she was just 12 years old, Jeanne married her first husband, 19-year-old Geoffrey VIII de Chateaubriand, a Breton nobleman, and they had two children. Geoffrey IX, inheriting his father's estates as baron, died in the Battle of Le Chardirier, and Louise married Guy XII de Laval and subsequently inherited her brother's estate as baroness. Jeanne's first husband died in 1326. In 1328, Jeanne married Guy of Penfever, of the Counts and Dukes of Penfever, widow of Joan of Avajour and son of Arthur II, Duke of Brittany. Remember when we talked about war Brittany's succession? Yes, that guy. Anyway, Joan have done this to protect her underage children. The union was short-lived, as a relative of ducal family, in particular from the Blois faction, laid a complaint with the bishops of Vannes and Rennes to protect their heritage, and an investigation was conducted on February 10, 1330, resulting in the marriage being annulled by Pope John XXII. Guy then married into the Blois factions to Marie de Blois, who was also a niece to Philip VI of France. Guy, however, unexpectedly died on March 26, 1331, and his heritage passed to his daughter, Joan of Penfever. In 1330, Joan married Oliver de Clisson IV, a wealthy baron, holding a castle at Clisson, a manor house in Nantes and lands on Blaine. Oliver has initially married Blanche de Bouville, but she died in 1329. Joan, a recent widow herself of Lord of Chateaubriand, controlled area of Poitou, just south of Breton border of Baveux-sur-Mer, in the west of Chameur, in the southwest of Clisson. Combining these assets would make Jeanne and Oliver one of the largest landowners in the marshes. I am 100% sure that this marriage was for love, not for money, as the story will show. Unfortunately for them, they were not very long together. Jeanne and Oliver eventually had 5 children: Isabeau, Maurice, Oliver V, who by the way will be a future constable in France with the nickname the Butcher. Not sure if it would make his mother proud though. Guillaume and Jeanne. During the Breton War of Succession, the Clissons sided with Charles de Blois for the empty Breton ducal crown and fought against the English contender George de Montfort. The extended de Clisson family was not in full agreement in this matter, and Oliver IV's brother, Omar de Clisson, embraced the Montfort party. In 1342, English, after 4 attempts, captured the city of Vannes. Jeanne's husband Oliver and Herr VI de Leon, the military commanders defending the city, were captured. Lucky for him, Oliver was the only one released after the exchange for Ralph de Stafford, the first Earl of Stafford, a prisoner of French, and for a surprisingly low sum. However, his luck turned into the doom. Oliver to be subsequently suspected not having defended the city to his fullest, and was alleged by Charles de Blois to be a traitor. On January 19, 1343, the Truce of Malestroit was signed between England and France. Under perceived safe condition of this truce, Oliver and 15 other Breton lords were invited to a tournament on French soil, where he was subsequently arrested, taken to Paris, tried by his peers, and on August 2, 1343, executed by beheading at Les Arcs. In the year of our grace 343, on Saturday, the 2nd day of August, Oliver, Lord of Clisson, died prisoner in the Châtelet of Paris for several treasons and other crimes perpetrated by him against the king and the crown of France, and for alliances that he made with the king of England, enemy of the king and kingdom of France, as the said Oliver was confessed by the judgment of the kings given at Orleans, drawn from the Châtelet of Paris to Les Halles, and there on the scaffold had his head cut off, and then from there his corpse drawn to gibbet of Paris, and there hang at the highest level, and his head was placed on Nantes in Brittany to be put on the lance of the Safety Gate at the warning to others. The execution shocked the nobility as the evidence of guilt was not publicly demonstrated, and the process of desecrating or exposing the body was reserved mainly for low-class criminals. This execution was judged harshly by Froissart and his contemporaries. There are records indicating that shortly after Oliver de Clisson's execution, several other knights were accused of similar crimes. The Lord of Malestroit and his son Lord of Avaugour, Citruban de Muriot, and other lords of Brittany, to the number of 10 knights and squires, were beheaded at Paris. 4 other knights of nobility, Sir William Baron, Sir Henry de Malestroit, and Lord of Rechetesson, and Sir Richard de Percy, were also put to death. According to the legend, Joan took her 2 sons, Oliver and Guillaume, from Clisson to Nantes to show them the head of their father at Safety Gate. Joan, enraged by her husband's execution, swore retribution against the French king Philip VI and Charles de Blois. She considered their actions as a cowardly murder. Joan then sold the Clisson estates, raised the force of loyal men, and started attacking French forces in Brittany. Thus Joan is said to have taken the castle of Tufeux near Bonn, a castle occupied by Gillois de Lazu, an officer of Charles de Blois, massacring the entire garrison with the exception of one individual. The garrison of Chateau de Bourg, about 20 kilometers southeast of Nantes, which had been a former post under the control of her husband. With the English king's assistants and Breton sympathizers, Joan outfitted 3 warships. These were painted black and their sails dyed red. The flagship was named My Revenge. The ships of the Black Fleet has patrolled the English Channel, hunting down French ships. She killed entire crews, leaving only a few witnesses to transmit the news to the French king. This earned Joan the nickname the Lioness of Brittany. Joan continued her piracy in the Channel for another 13 years. Joan is also said to have attacked coastal villages in Normandy and have put several to sword and fire. In 1446, during the Battle of Crécy south of Calais, in northern France, Joan used her ships to supply the English forces. She was so famous that even was mentioned in a truce between France and England in 1347 as an English ally in Treaty of Calais at September 28, 1347. After the sinking of her flagship, Joan with her 2 sons were adrift for 5 days. Her son Guillaume died of exposure. Joan and Oliver were finally rescued and taken to Marly by Montfort supporters. In 1456, Joan married a 4th time to Walter Bentley, one of the King Edward's military deputies during the campaign. Bentley had previously won the Battle of Muron on August 4, 1352, and was handsomely rewarded with his service of lands and castles. Joan finally settled at the castle of Annibon, a port town on the Brittany coast, which was a territory of de Montfort's allies, where she died in 1359. But Joan's story didn't end perfectly from her perspective, because she never managed to take revenge on Charles de Blois for his role in Oliver's death. He lived until 1364, when he died in battle, and he was later canonized as a saint in the Roman Catholic Church. So this is a story of pure woman's rage. There is nothing stronger than a woman wrong. Well, while we are discussing the 100 Years' War, this story is adding some stretches to the portrait of Philip VI and Charles of Blois. Well, that's it for today. Thank you very much. Like it if you do, subscribe if you don't want to miss more. Thank you very much. Bye bye.